The scope of a variable is the portion of the program in which the variable can be used. To illustrate what this means, we're going to use this example program. We're assuming all of this code is in the same Python file. You can see we have a function called mystery that takes two inputs, which we're assuming are numbers. It does some math with them, and it returns a number. And then we have some other lines of code that, because they are not indented, are not part of mystery. They are outside of any function. Local variables are variables that are created when we assign a value to a variable inside of a function. So for example, in this code, b is a local variable of the function mystery because we're assigning it a value inside the function. And local variables, you can think of them as belonging to that function. They can be accessed inside of that function, so you can see we're using the value of b here. But they cannot be accessed outside. So down here, if I try to run this code, we're going to get an error message because b cannot be used down here outside of its function. Now it turns out the parameters of a function, in this case we have two parameters, x and y, are also essentially local variables. We can only use them inside the function. Global variables, on the other hand, can be used anywhere in the program, and they are created when we assign a value to a variable outside of a function. So here I'm assigning a value to c outside of any function, and so it is a global variable. Another way of saying that is it belongs to the global scope. And we can use these outside of any function, so here I'm using c in the print statement here, but I can also, in theory, use c inside of a function. So if I wanted to, I could use c up here in mystery. This is not recommended, however, and we're going to talk more about why in lecture. Now, because of the fact that we can have different scopes, you can actually have two different variables with the same name. So if I add this line of code here outside of any function, you can see that we now have two different variables named b. We have the one that is local, that belongs to the function mystery, and we have one that is global, that is defined here outside of any function. A local variable always has priority in its own function. So up here, when I have 2 times b, I'm accessing the local b, not the global one. But down here, when I'm outside of mystery, I'm printing the global b. To get a better sense of how Python keeps track of variables, let's use the visualizer tool that is available at pythontutor.com. And there's a link to Python Tutor on the course website. And you can see you want to make sure to choose the right version of Python, so Python 3, and then you can put in some code. So here's the program that we were looking at earlier, and you can type in whatever you want there. And then you come down here and you click Visualize Execution. Doing so brings me to a page that allows me to step through my program. And you can see that Python Tutor has added line numbers to the program. It also has a red arrow pointing to the first line. In general, that red arrow is going to show me the next line to be executed. When I click the forward button, it executes that line. So in this case, it's defining the function mystery. And it leaves behind a pale arrow showing me that that was the last line to execute, the one that was just carried out. And the red arrow advances and is now pointing at line 5. When I click forward again, that line 5 gets executed and I assign 7 to C. Now, if you look over at the right-hand side here, Python Tutor is showing me a set of frames. This is where Python keeps track of its variables. It's a region of memory known as the stack, and you have a collection of stack frames. There's one frame for the global scope. All of our global variables go there, including C. The global frame is also used to keep track of our functions. When I call a function, as I'm about to do here with mystery 5, 2, we get a new frame for that function call. Every time you make a function call, Python adds a new stack frame to the stack, containing all of the variables that belong to that function call, all of the local variables. So you can see the parameters are in there right now, x and y, and as I go ahead and execute mystery, we add a local variable b containing the value of x minus y. Then we are going to return 2 times b, or 6. Now once the function returns, the stack frame goes away, and that's why those local variables can't be used outside of the function, because the stack frame is gone and that variable is no longer available. And I jump back and I pick up where I left off down here in the global part of the program, and you can see when I go to print here, I get an error message because I can't access that variable b anymore. It's gone, it's no longer on the stack because the function has returned and its stack frame has gone away. And so that's why local variables can't be accessed outside of their function. Let's edit our code to fix the error, and you can do that by clicking right here, which brings us back to that previous screen. This time, let's go ahead and add a line down here that creates the global variable b and assigns it the value 1. And let's go ahead and visualize this new version of the program. We click forward, we get the global frame with information about the function mystery, and now, because we're assigning 1 to b, we get a global variable b. And again, this b is not local to mystery. It belongs to the global scope. We still have c as a global variable, and then when I call mystery, I get a new stack frame for it. Initially it's just the parameters, but then I go ahead and I assign something to the local variable b. And notice how at this point we have two different b's. We have one in the stack frame for mystery, its value is 3, and then we have the global variable b in the global frame, its value is 1. Here when we go to return, we're using the local variable b, so it's 2 times 3 that we return, or 6. We jump back to where the function call was made. The stack frame for mystery goes away, so we lose the local variable b. And so now when I go to print b plus c, I'm going to be printing the global b, its value, plus the value of c, which is 1 plus 7, or 8. And we can see the output of the program if we scroll down, and you can see down here the value 8.